Let's continue the Hungarian Han Solo novels. The third book is actually the second book in Dale Avery's trilogy, which doesn't really have a title, but it's a thing. And that becomes pretty obvious. I was very curious how this is gonna play out, because I have read The Imperial Agent before when the first translation leaked online, and now I went through it a second time, also after reading the standalone book Han Solo's Nomads by Ed Fisher. And I was curious, what type of trilogy is this gonna be? Are they gonna be really connected? Is it one big story? Or are they gonna be like standalone adventures with connective tissue? And yeah, they are very much one story, if you will. Haven't read the final book yet. I have yet to see how that handles its story, but this book, Han Solo and the Bounty Hunters, is a direct sequel to Han Solo the Imperial Agent. And I guess, yeah, you kind of have to read Imperial Agent to fully understand this one. Because, yeah, everything just straight up continues. And once again, I don't want to spoil too much, because I highly recommend these books. And I will say this right up front, Han Solo and the Bounty Hunters is just as good as Imperial Agent was, in terms of the writing, the pacing, the characters, the action, the humor, everything in here just works pretty damn well. Now for the story itself, let's just quickly go over it. It's not quite as complex as Imperial Agent kind of was in its story, but still there's a lot going on and many twists and turns in here, some of which are more easy to guess than others. But okay, so we start with Gorin Moss, the Imperial bounty hunter. He's still working with Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Scarpa, the policeman that they kidnapped at the beginning of Imperial Agent. They are all working as Imperial Agents still, and have to help Moss hunting down the main villain, the First. And the First, in the last book, his plan was establishing his Splinter Cell, his own empire on this planet, and using the local population, and and that was all ruined by Han and the gang. And now in this book, the First wants to establish a new base of operations, he's building one, and he's working with the local governor, the Imperial governor, who's, I guess, also defecting from the Empire and is joining the First and his whole scheme. So a big element of the story is that Han and the rest of the gang have to go kind of undercover, and they want to bring material to this new base. So they have to modify the Millennium Falcon and kind of fuse it with another ship. And that's an interesting aspect. I think that's even on the cover, what you see there. And that's fine, that's fun, and there's some good humor with that, because obviously Han is not a fan. But there is a lot more going on here with the two bounty hunters, Gorin Moss and the First. And I can't say much more in that regard without spoiling plot elements, but it's pretty good what's going on here. We also get more with Scarpa, and the governor who's working with the First was his former boss, and Scarpa wants to tell him what he really thinks of him, and with that we go back into the great cursing that's in these Hungarian books, which was accurately translated. Okay, so before I continue and go into slight spoilers, I wanna tell you about all the swearing, at least some of them. Han Solo saying, "kiss my ass." Scarpa calling the governor a real piece of shit. Some other phrases like, "you are a colossal asshole." A great comedy moment near the end when Scarpa is asking if a droid can talk, and the droid just responds, "asshole," to him. Fun stuff. And again, this is just literally translated, and I like it. You would never see this in an American Star Wars novel, obviously. But I like that it's in here, and it doesn't really feel out of place. Like, it just fits. Like, you're not really questioning it. So that's really fun. But now with the main story, I want to continue that a little bit. Because we don't just have Han and Gorin Moss and the First and the governor plot, that's the main thing. But also in there is Marl Davian, who is a young Imperial guy who was stationed on a Star Destroyer in the previous book, and he was the side character, and he is as well in this one, and he is after Gorin Moss. He thinks Gorin Moss and the First are the same person and he just wants to murder the Imperial bounty hunter. So that is also a plotline that's going on in here, and there's a big development with him at the end, and that's nice. I don't want to spoil too much, but I have to say more about the main villain, the first. So he is an Imperial bounty hunter, just like Gorin Moss, but he's also a self-declared Dark Jedi. He was apparently trained by Darth Vader, and he has murdered 3 other apprentices of the Emperor, which is weird and interesting, okay? So basically, this book makes it clear this really is Han Solo joining an Imperial agent, taking down a Dark Jedi who's trying to form his own empire. And I don't know if I can even make that clear. It's insane that this plot works for me in this book, because it's so big in terms of scale, but at the same time feels small scale enough. It's very strange. But somehow this author makes it work. Because normally, like, Han Solo interacting with Force users, like the first even uses a lightsaber at one point, and the Dark Jedi being in here and stuff, and you would think, and with Han, pre A New Hope, that shouldn't really happen, but it kind of works. And that's just insane. I just had too much fun reading this. The book also ends on a cliffhanger, because Han and Chewie end up captured. Some of their friends are still on their own with the Millennium Falcon coming to their rescue. In the 3rd book, I'm assuming. And there is stuff going on with Gorin Moss and Marl Davian, which I guess we will get into in the 3rd and final book. It should also be said, there is an explanation what's really going on with, like, is there actually the first, or is this all a plot by Gorin Moss? That is explained, that's fine. And also there is a very shocking death in here. I will have to spoil it when I talk about the 3rd book, because it's probably definitely going to be plot relevant. But yeah, that was very surprising, because you wouldn't expect that to happen in the 2nd book of a trilogy. But all in all, Han Solo and the Bounty Hunters is the same level of quality as Imperial Agent. If you like that book, this one is just as good. It's really fun. Again, this author just nails it, which is crazy. Like, in terms of plot, atmosphere, characters, especially Han, who is still very much Han Solo as you would expect, the action, the humor, the pacing, all of that just works really well. And I can't wait to see how this trilogy is gonna wrap up in the 4th and final Hungarian Han Solo book, which I will talk about next time. Han Solo's War.